One of my favorite lines is everything is happening for you, not to you. And it seems simple, but it's it takes a long time. And maybe not for some, but for me it took a while to arrive at that mindset. And I think it's a winner's mindset and it's a growth mindset. And it's one that you'll notice that most people who have done extraordinarily well in their fields or with their family or relationships, they embody that. And of course, all of us slip and have periods where we're not doing that and we're being victimized by what our life has become or the things outside of us or missing trades or whatever it is being dealt with. Just thinking about my family life. I mean, you're this person, I'm doing more, you're doing more. There's always a shortage of time, and it's easy to say that you're getting the raw end of the deal sometimes, and a million things that could be. You could use examples from everywhere. But this mindset of it's always happening for me, not to me, is thinking about how the things that are outside of me sometimes are great and sometimes they're painful, but all they are is things outside of me. And inside of me is this watcher and decision maker who can decide to interpret those either way. So the way I've heard it that helped me the most is when something happens, we study something for a trade, put a lot of effort into it, and we miss the trade, or we trade too big and we lose on the trade, and then it works out and we're just exasperated. I used to have this when I was trading in Chicago at the prop firm, and then the guy next to me would just casually get into the trade. And it would work out for him. And there's a younger version of me. Holy shit, this is not fair. I worked harder. I studied this. This guy's barely paying attention. He just clicks in at the right time. But later you learn that there's a wisdom in waiting for the right time and understanding and all that. And that's part of what you learn. And but back to the quote. In that situation, like that you work hard and miss the trade or whatever, or you trade too big and miss the trade, analyze it for a second. It's always your fault. Everything that happens to you is your fault, your responsibility, no matter, even if you don't think it is. Because in that sense, you trade too big because there's a scarcity or a fear mindset that you need to take it all back in one swipe. So you trade too big, you're emotional and you can't hold on to the trade. Well, that's partially your fault. That's something that you can learn, you can grow from. So you can look at that instead of being upset and say, that's a great lesson for next time. But then the emotion comes up even stronger that you want to make up for it next time. So that's something that oftentimes you need to step away for the day or for longer until that simmers down and you can come back into your centered mindset. Let's say that you try for the trade and you're not too big, but you try the trade two or three times and you're just so aggressive to get in that your spot's not that great and you can't hold on. Also, I could say that would be a sizing problem because a lot of times when I'm in that mindset, what I do is I purposely trade smaller. So if it goes against me, I can handle it. I would rather have it go against me a significant margin where I know it's busted, with the loss isn't that bad financially because the size is small, than to miss the trade. And you know what I'm saying? I'm I like to go on a lot of little tangents in between the main points. I'm going to do one here quickly. What I'm saying is part of the reason why I've switched to a lot of in the day futures equity options. I'm not day trading that often, but when I do, it's looking for bigger moves in the day. And the reason I like the option is because I don't have to worry about getting out. I mean, eventually I get out, but I don't have to worry about, oh crap, it went against me for a half hour and then it works out 2 hours later. I don't need to worry about that as much because I paid the premium and I'm in. And I can decide I can decide that risk right up front, which is a wonderful thing when you're a little bit of a more thematic trader, like I tend to be during the day, which might seem silly to some who trade for over many months, but there's scalping and there's longer term day trading. And there's also other trades that I do that last weeks or months too, but different point. But going about everything you do in this is happening for my growth. And that is, there's always something there that's the case. So another thing is you get in and you get out, not because of sizing, but because you start doubting yourself. You read some bearish commentary. Someone you respect maybe says something to you about how they don't like the market, they don't like the stock, but you liked it, but now you're second guessing. It doesn't work for a little bit and you get out. So why has this happened? Well, it's another one of those things where there's a growth lesson in there to make you become better. And the lesson for me in that one is that my conviction needs to be stronger. I need to do more back testing on my system. I know that that's not the panacea back testing. But it's something that makes you believe in what you're doing. Maybe if you back test, you can control your risk parameters because you believe that what you're doing has a good risk control, and that's the thing that you took out of your back testing. If you fall and slip, then you at least know, generally speaking, that you're not going to get killed because of the way you're managing your risk, and you're still going to be there for winners. So that's one thing. You could also say in that situation where you listened to somebody else or you doubted yourself and you couldn't hang on, that back to your level of conviction. So there's the back testing. And then there's also like, well, maybe you haven't studied enough similar winning trades, or you don't really believe that over 100 times this is going to work. I don't know. If it even works 25 times, you could be very successful if you're holding your winners longer and cutting the losses short, which is how I trade. So my swing trading, position trading stuff is probably like, oh, it tracked at 2024, I would say maybe 36 to 38% winning trades and the rest losing trades. In my career, my whole career, if I ran every day trade I've done, thousands of trades going back to, when I was in my early 20s, I bet you would see something like 34, 32 to 36% winners. And there's a lot of break even trades I had, so maybe like 20%, 15%, and then the rest losers. I bet that's what you'd see. And there's not a lot of break even trades anymore because the market doesn't move that way anymore. It used to be slower, and you'd scratch trades. You'd get in, it would go your way, and you'd come back. And that's just not really a thing anymore as much with how markets move now. So, okay, so in that situation, you say, wow, well, and you've probably heard this before. And you could also make money doing well on 70% and losing on 30, but having just a really good hit rate, and they're equal size or even smaller winners, but the success is high. But I've always been taking bigger hits, bigger swings. I'm been a big game hunter that way, and I don't mind taking singles and doubles if they're there, and I often take those trades. But I'm not looking to swing for the fences every time either. But I'm trying to put myself in a position to make multiples, because that's the advantage of someone who doesn't have to trade. Like, we don't have to put money to work. We don't have to have clients calling us saying, "Hey, S&P's up 10% in 6 months, and you're sitting on your ass. You're not doing anything. I need you to churn out some activity." It's like, well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to. I can sit and wait and do things that make sense to me. So, but the moral of the story for all these two or three examples is, in each case there's like something in there that at first seems frustrating, like you're a victim and you should externalize it. It's no fair, it sucks, I'm pissed off. But if you look at it, it's like, my conviction's not high enough. I don't trust my risk enough. I'm trading too big. Doesn't seem like, maybe for your net worth or your salary, you're not too big, but you are too big for what you've earned trading wise. Like, maybe that you could make $1 million a year in your job, but taking a loser because of how you're wired over your skis of what you've earned trading is not acceptable. It doesn't feel good emotionally. It's not going to work for you. So it's not about, and I've had some serious problems with that. When I switched from futures to stocks, when I started doing stocks more, which is kind of something I'm focusing on a lot more these days, I used to trade big and take swings because I had made money in futures, and I got killed. I lost so much money doing that because it was like, it's a different job in some ways. They're very different. Like how I trade an index future on FOMC, based on all the years I've been looking at stuff, and how that day specifically FOMC is very different than any other day, is so not how I would trade a swing trade or position trade or even look for an investment. They're all different. So I think it's always build out and learn one thing, and then you go to another thing. And since I've been around for over 20 years, there's been multiple things I've learned, and I'm trying to add more things right now. And that's kind of the transition now into this idea of a paid group. My whole thing that I want to do is I want to have an intimate, smaller group of people that it could start to be 5 or 10 people, and I probably wouldn't want it to ever be more than 100. And something small, honestly, it could be 20 to 50, something where we become collaborators, we share, people know each other, we sidestep a lot of the nonsense about the things I've told you about in other groups where there's well intentions, but there's a lot of texting and chatting about things, and people don't understand the text, and there's bravado and arguing and P&L posting and all that crap. And you get instead into real people who actually want to learn and grow, and people who have maybe traded for a long time and have some money built up too. Doesn't have to be, but people of all different. It helps when you're with peers. It's hard when you mix people who are really new with people who have 20 years of experience, but there is a place to to have everybody grow, like to go down to the basics that everyone learns from, and also to say, have a high level conversation with someone who knows a lot about the market and has seen a lot of cycles and understands the euphoria. So I think it's good to have a little bit of all that in there, a mixture of that, and most groups have that, I think. But forming something that's, I think the more intimate thing and the smaller, tighter thing where there's more interaction, maybe more handling some personal things about situations that people are going through, how to handle slumps in trades, and what do you do when your trade stops working? Are there others that are doing things that are working? Are they vulnerable enough to share that? And are we able to find maybe interesting things to read each week that can further our development in terms of adapting to what's coming? Because I think what's coming is going to be something that none of us really fully know how it's going to shape up in the markets with the robotics and the AI stuff. So I have one eye on watching these futuristic YouTube videos and podcasts from people and CEOs at roundtables to see kind of where are we going. But that doesn't really, you can't let that bleed into holding stuff that's overvalued or getting caught up in the mindset of what's going to happen in 5 years. But I also want to be prepared so I can kind of have a watch list and things like that. So my job has always been, how do I adapt to whatever comes? And I've had to go through some really tough ones in my career I've detailed a lot of this on the podcast, but from old school screen trading, I was kind of there right after the pit guys moved over. I never was in the pit and then had to adapt. And I saw people from the pit try to adapt to the screen. It was really tough. Like very few, if any, made it. And then the screen stuff changed so much. I'm not going to go over it all, but it changed from you could read the book to you couldn't read the book. And now you basically can't read the book, but sometimes you can. And I don't do it enough, but sometimes when it's busy, you can read the book again because the machines will pull out when the chaos starts during COVID. Sometimes the Federal Reserve can be like that and other events, but it's just less and less prevalent. So you end up sitting there for all year for 10 trades, the guy who used to have, 10 of those trades a month. And that's happened more and more so over time. That's why you see a lot of people who were the news event prop traders, and I did a lot of that too, go extinct because the game is gone. It's not like that anymore. And those skills still work and they're still valuable, but they need to learn to repurpose and take that same energy and put it into something else. And it's hard to leave to a different field. So part of my job and my hope in a group would be helping people along with I'm doing this myself in real time. So this is something I have enjoyed doing. I have to do, because I want to do it. So it would be bringing people along in that journey into, okay, what do you read? What do you subscribe to? What do you not do? How do you handle these periods? How do you handle uh, the crypto movement? How do you handle this euphoria right now we're having in quantum stocks and AI stuff? And then I don't want to be jumping between day trading and this stuff. And how do I handle that? And how do I sift through it all? And that's kind of part of what I've had to do for myself. And then another side of it is, what do you do with the money you make? Do you trade everything? Do you trade some of it? If you make enough money to live and handle a few years of life expenses, what does the rest of the money do? And a lot of that's individualized, but those are things I've tackled and had to deal with as well. And there's just a lot of things about a mindset of someone who's always growing and learning and adapting and who's committed to doing this. And I think that's really the most important thing you can do, is to invest in that sort of stuff for yourself. Because I know people want, like, there's this trade and that trade, but that never stays. But there's been some awesome books, like, the Jesse Stein Superstocks book is great. And I've learned a lot from him about the media and all that stuff. And I think most of us understand the media is not something we want to trust that much. And we know the manipulation, especially lately, the last 3 or 4 years. But that being said, there's timeless things like that. But there's also like small cap, undervalued stocks and things like, it's not as easy as it used to be. Like if there was a glory day for that or a heyday for that, it's just not really the case right now. And will it cycle back? Yeah, probably, maybe. But it could be real dry for a while. Those trades just don't show up. It's a different market. Think about the equity leverage of the market now. Think about the democratization of crypto trading, Robinhood, cheap charts on TradingView, all the phone apps. Think about how many people after COVID who got money and are now in the market trading. That was not the case. I mean, some of you may be younger and haven't been around for beyond 5 or 10 years. It's never used to be like this. There's so much more trading, which means that the moves are bigger and there's more volatility and there's massive crashes and pullbacks and things that you didn't probably expect to happen that are happening faster, quicker. So your ability to have trading skills and to have a game plan, and I think most importantly to adapt to for your personality and your situation, to learn how to adapt and grow and stay relevant, because things change. You could have a great run with a system that works really well and it goes away, it stops working, and it often comes back around. I remember, quick story on that, in 2007 I started to build into trading really well. It was kind of building from '06, and in '07 the guy next to me, Brent, who I talk about a lot, who I had we started a little podcast together. It never really took off, but you can dig up a few episodes. Brent Nord, his name is. But one of the things that we did is he figured out we'd be spreading the European index versus the US index and not give us relative value. And I've always loved, it's still a big theme of my trading, is figuring out how you can have things versus other things. If I can compare something to something else or to a group of something else, I get some sense of relative value. And when that's the case, it's sometimes easier for me to see relationships and make trades, at least manage my risk. It's not always possible, but if I can do that, I do it. That's like that and divergences and other things that have gotten tougher, but they still do show up at big times, especially the concept of neglect. I'm getting off topic again, but neglect is a breakout that's largely ignored, which gold would be a good example on the daily highs. Bitcoin is not an example of neglect, right? There's no neglect in Bitcoin. Doesn't mean it's not going to continue, but you get the difference. Walking up a hill right now. But back to the example I was talking about. I forgot exactly where I left off. But, 2007. So I'm spreading European equities versus US futures. I'm not doing it to spread. I'm doing it to feel the market. So it's like, it looks like the US is stronger. This is a decent area to buy, so I'll buy the US and I'll sell some Europe. So if it goes down, it doesn't hurt as much. In that process, I was able to feel the flow in both books and then learn how to drop one of the legs and just ride the other one in the outright direction. And that was very hard for me to do when I was just picking one product. So that ended up being a big key for me to kind of hold on and figure out how to stay in the market and ignore all the noise. So then 2008 came along and the big crash happened, and that still to this date is my best year I've ever had. And because I was trading futures, now if I'm trading stocks, it's tougher overnight to hold short and the gaps up, but the day trading futures was great because there was so much volatility and things like that. So what I would do is I would use that spread and get myself into good positions. And eventually when '08 started coming along, I just started dropping the spread altogether and trading the outrights. And I was just really dialed in and getting really great spots, kind of using the spread without putting it on. So it was an example of using things to value other things, relative positioning, things like that. So fast forward, I never have done that since. And those equity spreads got tougher and tougher, and it never really worked that way anymore. Some people might do it, but it just didn't didn't provide me with any value. But provided me with so much value for a couple of years. There's so many things like that I've done that have worked, and then they stop working. But you take a piece of what you've learned and you file it away, and you never lose that. And over time, those all go into your bank of tools, weapons, things that you remember, make you smarter, more resilient, and just build your knowledge base. So my point is that you're never going to learn one trade from somebody. You want to learn, the give a guy a fish or teach a guy to fish for life, that line. That's the thing. It's a mindset thing. It's a humility, risk management, all the things you hear. You see people write on them. You listen to books. You listen to me, whatever you do. But you still have to do it yourself. And there's some sort of a knowing that just clicks on you one day about certain things. And some of you probably have had this where you've read about this your whole life. All of a sudden, it just kind of clicks. You just realize the boom and bust cycle is not working for you, and you decide to make a change and do something different, and you make a change in your trading. Or you're okay with missing things because you know that over 1,000 times it's the right move. It's the right move to miss it because the risk reward sucks. And those are the things that I believe in learning helping people collaborate with me, to teach, and to get better myself. I don't have it all figured out. I subscribe to a lot of really good, deep people, and I want to pull a lot of that in as well. And I like having a lot of information because for me, I've always done well with a ton of information and then I make my own decisions. Some people like no information. That's totally fine too. And sometimes you spend a couple of years deep diving into groups and then you get out and you go quiet and do it on your own. That's great too. I've done that. But I think for me, getting out and having something of my own and going beyond this podcast, because the podcast I'll always do the podcast where I talk generally about things like this, but in a group, it would be more regular interaction about, okay, this is not necessarily every single trade ever done, but a lot of trades. It would be like, hey, this is something that I'm waiting for to set up. This is how I'm going to look to buy it. And this is kind of where I'm looking to get out. And then in real time, it changes, right? It's like, oh, this went up way faster, or this is not feeling right. It doesn't move for 3 days. I'm cutting this. Or, okay, it's FOMC day. I'm going to be trading futures options today. These are the things I'm looking for. This is a general area or general thing, or a lot of it's on the fly. It's like, I thought this, and then all of a sudden later, 15 minutes later, it's like, I thought this, but guess what? It's the opposite, and it's the opposite in a big way because everyone's stuck thinking the same thing. And that's how this stuff works sometimes. It's not so you can map it out. And remember too, this is trading, not investing. Investing is different. I am involved in investing too, and I'm really trying to educate myself more on that. And I'm listening to a lot of Warren Buffett books and listening to his share letters and all that stuff. I'm interested in the whole shebang, but trading's for income. Like, you have to get that straight in terms of you're trading to make money, to make income, not to be right, not to make income. You can use the income to invest, to build, to do whatever you want in your life. But when you start crossing the wires between trading and investing, it's very dangerous. You lose a lot of money. And I know that, and I used to not like Warren Buffett way back in the day because I didn't read anything about him when I was in my 20s. And I just heard the strong opinions about short-term trading for total idiots. And I am doing it. So it pissed me off. But he's right. It's generally a terrible, terrible idea for most people. Unless you're one of those people like me who this is what you want to do. In which case, you strap in and you learn how to do it. I think it's the casino the market has turned into with the volatility and the opportunities more important than ever to build trading skills, I think. And think about this. When you're investing and paying for information, think about what it costs you to go out for dinner or to have drinks. Think about what your health insurance costs you. I have shitty health insurance. I think I'm paying $1,500 a month for my family of 4. I don't even use it. So what's it worth to subscribe and to pay for trading knowledge? You know what I mean? I think it's crazy how, if you think about it, well, there's a lot of shit out there too. And that's the thing. I've sifted through a lot of shit, but after a while, you just know you don't connect with something, you don't do it. You kind of can tell. And if you can't tell, then you're the sucker. And that's something that I quickly figured out. And I think a lot of people don't want to take accountability. You see a lot of this stuff on Twitter. Hey, it's $10 a month. I'll give you all my trades. And the poor guy is just arguing and defending himself. And morons on there, fishing and complaining. You liked AMD last week and now you're short AMD. I want my money back. I want my $8 back. It's like, it's just, you have to have radical accountability for everything that happens, including who you sign up with, who you listen to, what decisions you take. All of it is your own fault, no matter what. And that's really the only kind of people I want to work with. And I know that's the kind of people that I hang out with. And I've had to learn to be that kind of person myself. I wasn't born that way. I had to work at that. I had to work really hard at that. I mean, everyone feels like their life is happening to them, not for them sometimes. It's a normal thing. But I have a friend who got paralyzed recently, and he's so awesome, such an optimistic person. And his attitude already is like, why am I here? What's my life supposed to be? I'm going to inspire people with this. I'm going to do this for a reason. I'm going to get stronger. I mean, it's incredible. Most of us don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So we can at least do this when we're missing trades or blaming people online, which is kind of what I want to get away from with something more intimate. So something more something more intimate like that is going to cost me more time and effort, but it's a time and effort that I will enjoy putting forth for people who want to learn and want to grow. Because right now, I often spend a lot of time trying to answer questions and be helpful, but you almost got to just shadow something for a while, at least 6 months, and kind of feel that out. Sometimes there's nothing to do and there's nothing to talk about, and that's just the way it is. And it's time to read and learn, find other things, get into GPT. How can I make this work for me? Is there anything I could code or program or test, or what can I do? Like, what can I do? What if my trade stops working? When your trade's working, you maximize it as much as you can, but I'm always looking for a way that I can improve for what's next. So for me this year, fundamentals, I'm taking an API and I'm building all these fundamental custom ratios and stuff from people around me who are really good at fundamentals and from books I've read. And I'm going to get a nice clean database globally of everything that I know that I've learned from people who is useful. And I'm going to backtest and look at that with a lot of the technical stuff I'm doing and see if I can find some sort of an edge where I integrate that in. And maybe if it's times like 2022 or 2016, when things bomb out, my trades will get held for 3 to 6 months instead of 3 to 6 weeks if I'm able to lock all that together and it works. And that's not really for right now. That's not really the market we're in, but that's how I'm adding to my knowledge base, kind of betting on myself for the future to add yet one more piece. And slowly over time, hopefully my time frame extends. So, for the voices of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett who think the short-term trading is ridiculous, there is no ridiculous job, is what I say to that. Everything, being a doctor because your dad was a doctor when you hate it, is a pretty ridiculous thing and a disservice to society. So everything you do is for your own growth and for your family. And every time you make more of yourself, financially, personal growth, you build yourself into a stronger person, everyone around you is risen up and benefits. So that's the ultimate contribution you can make. It doesn't matter what your job is. I went through a phase of feeling like, what am I providing by trading? Well, income for my family, a life for kids, talking to you guys, connecting with others, getting people out of the awful corporate grind, working for something like that, having more freedom. How about all the buttons that trading pushes? About the things that you feel, the apathy, anger, irritation, fear of missing out, scarcity. Like, this business helps you purify and work through all of that, which ultimately is more important than anything else. Of course, you have to make money, but people don't make a lot of money and they don't keep money without these skills. Like, no one who's underdeveloped as a person makes a lot of money and keeps it. They might make a lot of money, they don't keep it. Look at young athletes who are underdeveloped spiritually, personally. They don't keep the money. They don't know who to trust. So I've seen it in my firm too. I've seen people make millions and lose it all. And I've seen people just do pretty well and keep going better and better, and they learn and they grow and they manage their risk and they just take off. So that's kind of what I want. Those are the people I want around me. That's what I want in a group. And that's my whole thing. I want to be surrounded by as much of that as possible. And the level of expertise matters a little less than that attitude. Because I've always had that attitude, but I didn't have the expertise always. And I have way more expertise now than I did in 2008, but 2008 is still my best year today. But I know way more. Well, that was the right time for the right place with the right market. So a lot of it is luck. When you make a lot of money is luck. Sometimes, like, everything lines up. But the person who developed the skills to make the money isn't luck. Like, you put your whole life's work into being ready for when the time comes, and then when the time comes, you're ready. And it doesn't mean you can't do well. Like I've mentioned before, I've had many periods of 6 months where I've lost money and done terrible. But I've only had one bad year, and it was a pretty shitty year actually, 2022. And I talked about that, why that happened, and kind of jumping into different products and getting away from my strengths at the exact time where my market strength in 2022 was futures, and I didn't do it. And I learned a lot from that. And I basically was sick of kind of going the same way, and I really wanted to push my growth. And I just kind of artificially pushed it when it didn't make sense, and it really cost me. Traded way too big, held on to some losers, did some unspeakable stuff that's frankly embarrassing, but it just happens. And it's not going to happen again to that level because it happened. So that's just part of my path. But I mean, and I knew after 2022, I said to myself, I can guarantee you one thing: I won't lose money in 2023. I don't care what the market looks like. I will not lose money. I know I won't. And I didn't. I didn't have a great year in 2023. I had an average year for me, but I didn't lose. I just knew that go back to what you're doing. You're going to be fine. And then I had to kind of rebuild a little from there, get my confidence back. And then 2024 has been an interesting year because it's another average year for me, but I was on the cusp of a really good year. I had the quantum stuff early. I had crypto. I still have some crypto, but I had some close call. I let go of a lot of stuff that I was right there for, and I just kind of read a bunch of bearish stuff from people I respect, and kind of chickened out on some of my trades, and then watched them all work out. And that was kind of the last 3 months or so, and that was quite painful. And I had to kind of go through what I told you at the beginning. Why did that happen? Didn't have enough conviction. I did trade a little big. I had a lot of risk on in the same areas, and all of it led to me not able to capitalize fully. And then on top of it, I went into the short-term accounts and gave away a bunch of money like a jackass because I was frustrated with all the stuff that I missed out on, which you should say as a professional that should never happen. In revenge trading, basically, it wasn't super conscious. It was kind of subconsciously. I was just doing that and not really fully realizing it, trying to make up for something. And then I had that I had a very big day for me on the Fed day recently because I figured out those that moved down and bought those cheap options I mentioned in a different podcast. So I covered a lot of that short-term mess up with that day, but I made more than I lost, which is great, which is not always the case. I got lucky with that. Sort of lucky, sort of not, like we talked about. But okay, point being that I make all these mistakes too. So there's a couple ways to look at it. You could say, well, do you just keep managing your risk really, really tight and sometimes you hit a home run? Yeah, that's a great way to do it. The other way that I've heard people do it is you manage your risk good enough and you really clean house when it's a bull market or it's busy, or your short-term strategy is clicking, and you just clean house. And then you manage risk good enough. So think about football. If I score 30 points every game, my defense gives up 20, 25. It's good enough. It's good enough. The other way is I'm only giving up 15 points a game on defense. I'm really strong there. So sometimes I just score 30, and over time I do really well. Either way can work, and it depends on your personality. I think it's nicer to have really good defense, but quite honestly, for me, I'm like a hybrid of that. I usually hit it hard when I see it. I've always been that way. And my defense is not great sometimes. It's good enough though. It could be better. But sometimes people who are really defensive also don't play offense, and you end up on an absolute level making a lot more money than that version of yourself. But sometimes your defense could be better. It's hard to be perfect everywhere. So teams have won the Super Bowl with an average defense and a great offense. They've also won the Super Bowl with a great defense and an average offense. So you learn along the way to handle it for yourself, but you got to be strong somewhere. And I think a lot of that is our innate abilities in getting to know ourselves at a deeper level versus just copying someone else. Like I was in Stock B for a while, and I love that guy, Pradeep, the guy who runs it. He's great, and I think it's super legitimate everything he does. And he's teaching a lot of that stuff to everybody else. And I just don't think a lot of people are able to produce the results he is. Some do, some have, but most can't. And it's because they didn't develop it themselves. That's why I'm big about take these things. He has that super analytical, like logistics trade factory mentality where he's just churning out like good ideas, 5, 10 a day, and keep putting them on, managing your risk, and eventually it works. And just very lots of scans and that very detail oriented personality, or that whatever the personality is that has that type of strategy does well. But if you're more of like a methodical, slower thinker, that's probably not going to be a very good fit for you. But you can pick up some of the things, but that's not going to be a good fit for you. Maybe in that case, a better fit for you is something about I don't know. You have to find something like guys who are quick twitch would trade oil futures, sometimes S&Ps, but not slower stuff like fixed income. It just wasn't a good match for them. And that's the same thing. So that might not be a good fit for you, but something else might be. Something maybe where there's an earnings strategy where, I don't know, you're taking 10 to 20 trades a year. Something where you have an automated system that you figure out and you run that in the background, or you test and learn how to come up with something like that. And then your discretionary trading, It's just a few days. I mean, for me, I might actually do better. You'll laugh. I might do better if I just traded the 8 FOMCs a year, futures and nothing else. Because those are some of my best days. I mean, sometimes I can make half a year in one day or a whole year. And not always, but there's like always 2 or 3 meetings a year that are huge moves like we just had. And that's back to the old school stuff that I used to do. And that kind of dried up. But not really, because there's a lot of other days that are good too. So I'm, of course, going to be in there more than that. But I don't regularly trade every day in the short term anymore. I watch it, but I'm looking for swing trades, position trades. But the thing is, everything is under the same umbrella of thinking and logic. So it's kind of like back to the Warren Buffett stuff I'm reading. He was in Korea for a while doing Korean trades because he couldn't find any bargains in the U.S. So he learned the Korean accounting and was in South Korea just digging through financials and doing, he did like, I don't know, 10 or 20 companies out of the 1,000 that were there or something because he thought that they were good value and he didn't know for sure which ones to pick. So because he couldn't find things in America, but he just knew that his thinking process would work. Same thing with what I'm doing is that stupid news. People are stuck. People are not thinking about what tomorrow's newspaper is going to say today. That kind of thinking just endures the test of time. And that kind of thinking works in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And I also like the comment that a few things that I like. If you play stupid games and win stupid prizes. I think Naval said that on Twitter. That's a good one. And think about that if you're playing stupid games during the day, stupid little things, stupid trades, well, stupid prizes and eventually a stupid outcome. And another thing is just that all investing is value investing. There is no growth investing. And that's because even if you're a growth investor, you're looking at more growth down the road or something, an inflection that people don't see, in which sense you find value right now where others don't. And value investing doesn't have to be a crusty deep water driller that's going to dust off some old rigs that are hard to replace and all that kind of stuff. No, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that that's not the only way. And it depends on how you want to word this. There's so much gunk out there about how you have to do things. But really what you need to do is you need to be curious and you need to learn and grow. If you can't do that yourself, you have to pay your way into figuring out how to bring that to your life. And I've done both. And everything I've invested has been something that I've never regretted. If I did a group that I didn't like, I just know one more thing about what I don't like. Even the groups I didn't like, I got something. If I did something more expensive, oftentimes it was, I always think that the more you pay for something, the more you value it. So you never want to do something for a discount or give something away that you're creating for a discount, because when you do that, no one takes it as seriously. Everyone digs in more when they're paying for something. And I think that I've never been afraid to pay for information. And that's always come back to me many-fold, even though a lot of times I waste my money. Ultimately, I definitely don't waste my money. So I think there's a rule too that I think Charlie Kirk said something about. This is this is a real wide-ranging podcast today, but he said something about 5% of your income or projected income, real income, I guess, shouldn't go towards fees and I don't know about education if that's different, but definitely fees and software expenses, and that's probably education as well. And it depends though. If you come in with money from something else and you want to learn and devote yourself, that would probably be a little different than when I started. I had nothing. I had no money from anything else. I was just basically building from scratch, and I didn't really have a choice watching these ratios and these things wasn't really something I could do. I needed to build my knowledge base. And when I started, I would physically hunt down people who knew what they were doing. It's hard to do now. And everyone asks me all the time. The biggest thing they ask me, where do I find a prop firm? How can I get around these people? Well, the firm I had is gone now because the guy retired. And there's some other, I need to know of one other firm, but everyone's working remotely in their own silos now. The world's different. It's hard to learn. So you're forced to go on and you listen to interviews, you listen to podcasts, and you try to pick stuff up. Or you subscribe to groups and you try to figure out to make friendships and to extract information from people who are better than you or who know something that you don't know, and you try to take it with you. And then you give that to others and you add and you collaborate and we move forward and you make friends and you build a community. And that's kind of how things are going now because there's not as much physical interaction. I do think it'd be cool to get together in a physical group once in a while though, like once every couple of years or something, and do that. But That doesn't seem to happen quite as much. Everyone's got their own shit going on, and the world is changing that way. I understand that. I don't think it's always super healthy, and I do miss working around other people more. I never wanted to be around people all the time, but I do miss that. Some of that has a little bit of a competitive environment. That's kind of cool. That has a little bit of a system. It would be kind of cool too to have an anonymous scoreboard in a group. This might be a dumb idea, but it'd be kind of cool. You don't have to put your name, but everyone has to submit like a format of their records at the end of the year, and you say, "Wow, look what was possible. I'm struggling, but look what these three people did." And then potentially I used to interact with people who I knew were doing well and say, how are you doing this? Like, how did you know to be in that market? How did you know to buy that area? What's your process like? What do you do when you're struggling like me? And that's how I built myself. That's how I learned. I think some of the best things I did were learning from others. Probably, if I had a superpower, I would say it's being curious, number one. And number two is I have found others who are good and I've learned a lot from them. And I've kind of cobbled that together into my own unique approach. And that's probably forever going to be how it is with me. And because everything has been done before, for the most part, no one's reinventing trading or the wheel. But I guess the meme coins is new. I mean, that's GameStop happened. It's kind of like when Netflix put out the House of Cards. I remember being like, wow, that's cool. They made their own show. I wonder if it's possible to make another one. Well, fast forward 15 years, right? Think about meme coins. Like at GameStop happens. This is so dumb, stupid, makes no sense. Idiots on the internet doing this stuff, gambling, no value. It's ancient Rome, the fall of the U.S., all this stuff. And then now you have fart coins and butt coins and everything else, couch coins. And of course, most of them crash. I think most people do very poorly. Every once in a while, someone hits it big, and then everyone thinks that all the money is being made, but it's not really the case. I always remember when I was trading, we'd always thought the guy next to us was killing it because when he'd have a good trade on his screen, you'd go get some food, and you'd see this big winner. Look at this guy killing it over here, and you'd find out later that was his only good trade of the week, and he's in a big drawdown, and it just shows you the comparison, the what we do to ourselves, and how we always think everyone's doing so great, and people usually aren't doing as well as you think, and most of it is bullshit, and it's just not the case. And some people that you never have heard of are doing really well, quietly doing their own thing.